Hey, Frank, where'd you go? Where are you?
JB is it safe to come out yet?
I think so. Why is that?
I hear there's a bounty on my head from Brockport fans or something, so I think I have to be a little careful here. If you see anybody behind me during this interview, just let me know. Okay, I think I'm in a little trouble here. We'll resolve it. We'll see what happens. Anyway, we have a really important guest here who actually has frequent conversations with the athletic director at Brockport right now because he's on the East Region Regional Advisory Committee, which comes up with the regional rankings on Wednesday. But we want to talk not about that so much with him. We want to talk about his team's really, honestly, a big upset against MIT, a team that was undefeated coming into Saturday's game. Let's have you do the honors here, sir.
Yeah, from all the way in Worcester, Mass. WPI head coach Chris Robertson, or as we like to call him on the show, it's Coach C. Rob. How you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on the show this week.
Coach, one thing that jumped out to me when I was watching the broadcast on Saturday of your game was essentially how cold MIT looked and how your team did look cold, but you guys had some great capes on across the sideline. They did not seem to bring along themselves. Tell us about the elements. And, my policy is nobody can make excuses about the weather, and you don't have to make excuses about the weather. You won the game at the end of the day. But, tell us kind of what that nor'easter was really like and how it affected the game for your team, for them maybe even, and how you persevered through it.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about this fall has been we've had a lot of prep work for Saturday. We've practiced in a lot of rain this year. It's been a very wet fall for us. We've had lightning delays, etc. And so I think that kind of going into it, it was extremely evident that the weather was going to be there this Saturday. And it wasn't, it's a 50-50 chance. It was coming. So just talking, through with our guys during the week in terms of preparation. And like you said, it's not an excuse. Whatever elements you're facing on your sideline, it's the same on the other sideline. The game ultimately, if you've ever been to Worcester here in a game at WPI, it is a little bit or can be a wind tunnel at times, even on a sunny day with the breeze blowing, from east to west, west to east. And, it was legitimately 2 quarters of, for each team having the ability to, change field position in the kicking game. I mean, if you look at, our punter Spence, he had, a 50-yarder, and I think he had a 12-yarder. And, you probably could tell, which quarters it was going to happen. And same thing with MIT's punter and their kicking game. And, so the ability to kind of change field position depending upon what direction you were in is critical in close games. We were fortunate enough to score in the first half with the wind at our back. At halftime, I had a pretty good conversation with our staff about the decision, because we had to kick off going into the third quarter. And it was a unanimous decision that our defense, who've been playing well all year long, we were going to give MIT the win in the third quarter. We proceeded to shut them out in the third quarter. We got 2 field goals on the board, and Spence made a 31-yarder and a 41-yarder. Both of them probably would have been good from 50 yards with the tailwind that he had too. So, but it was a great game, and we had been in those games before this year. Being at 5-3. Losing a tough, close game to RPI early in the season, losing on the last possession to Springfield, losing on the last possession to Kings Point. So, the other, I think, good teams on our schedule that we had played this year had all been very tight, and it was good for our guys, I think, to get over the hump and to be able to finish that game in pretty convincing fashion. And we bought 50 capes a couple of years ago, and this was the first, I think, real good use. And I told the freshmen, I said, listen, when I look at you on the sideline, I don't want to see that you're cold. I want to see you giving energy to the players out there, because if not, I'm not going to have you back out here next home game. And their teeth were chattering, but they were bringing energy. And yeah, and I think my shoes are still drying out right now.
Yeah, I watched a good chunk of that game, and it did look pretty wet and cold there. But you guys made enough plays on offense, and as you mentioned, Spencer Harrington, he's really had a heck of a season for you, kicking the football. I mean, that 41-yard field goal in those conditions was pretty impressive. He's definitely been stronger players in D3 so far. But Coach, when we spoke in the preseason, you had a lot coming back on defense. You kind of knew what you had there, but there were a lot of questions that you had kind of coming in on the offensive side of the ball, given some graduations, a new quarterback. Tell us a little bit about Julian's development. Is he really, that one touchdown pass was a big deal in that game against MIT, especially given how few passing yards there were to come by. But sort of talk about the evolution of your offense throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, so we have been this has been a year of the injury bug for us on both sides of the ball. Earlier in the season, when we went up and played at Maine Maritime, I think we were down 4 or 5 starters on the defensive side. Offensively, we have not had. Last year, Sean McAllen and Connor Field are 2 running backs combined for over 2,000 yards, and we have not had one game this year where the 2 of them have been able to play healthy. So we've relied on some younger kids running the football. Up front with the offensive line, it's 4 juniors and a senior, but 3 of those juniors are first-year starters for us. So, there's still some, we're getting better every week, and those guys are learning how to work together as kind of one cohesive unit. And then there's Julian, and Julian comes from a great program in Eastern Mass, Melrose. Went to a state championship game down in Gillette Stadium. So came in with a good pedigree in terms of success at the high school level. This is his first year starting for us in his junior year, and he certainly has had his ups and downs. I think again when we look at our losses, especially I kind of look at the RPI game and I look at the Springfield game, and then late in the game against Kings Point, we're still turning the ball over, and against those good football teams, they're usually going to make you pay. And RPI, the final was 25-14. One of them was an interception for a touchdown. We threw another interception going into the end zone. We missed a field goal in the second half as well. So, I hate to say, I'd love to have those games back with a more mature and more developed Julian, but the nice thing is we have him for next year. Last year we had Blake Rice. He was a senior who was a 1-year starter for us. And so, Julian is he's very bright. He learns from his mistakes, and you can't, I guess, necessarily look at the statistics. I guess you can compare him to the MIT quarterback statistically. MIT's quarterback, I think, is probably one of the best throwers. He's been sacked only twice this year in the entire Northeast, and just a highly efficient kid. And you can say, okay, well, the weather was the reason why MIT's quarterback was 5 for 23. But Julian was 8 for 16, a touchdown pass, and had a couple of critical runs in the game as well. And unlike our last 2 quarterbacks with Blake Rice and Danny Eckler, Julian can run. And so I think that he's trusting himself a little bit more in the open field instead of making a decision to maybe try and force a ball to get a first down. He's using his legs. And, the one thing we harp on him is, whether it's first, second, third down, just get us to the next down. There's no reason to win a game in one throw. And, look back at the RPI game. He was trying to win the game multiple times just in one throw. And, so he is developing. He is a super smart young man. He cares so much. He works extremely hard. He's a leader of the offense. The team rallies around him and listens to him. So it's he's a good one. He's hopefully developing into a great one.
Apparently he's calling you right now or something.
Rusty. Is that Rusty Egan with his what's going on, Rusty?
Okay, Coach, you brought it up, so I'm gonna have to go there a little bit, but we're gonna try to flip it around here. There was a game a couple weeks ago that my friend Brian McGoffin and I, the SID over at Springfield, from time to time will text, And I texted him after I saw the final score. I'm like, you do realize that Merchant Marine won this game. It was a big comeback by them, a 25-24 comeback. And Brian said he fell off his office chair when he saw the score. I think James and I did the same. That was a shocking turnaround in that game by that team. But for a team like yours, that could have really derailed your team. That kind of turnaround loss, demoralizing, obviously, to the nth degree. How were you able to turn this team back around to come out and post the upset they did this past Saturday after something like that happens?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a great question. I mean, with our guys, I think, I talked to some other coaches and things like that, and I am not a person who puts, if you say in August, how many games are you going to win this year? Honestly, we don't think about those things, and we don't focus on those things. I know it's a big cliche to talk about the process and to take each day one at a time or whatever, but to be honest with you, I've been the head coach here for 9 years. My first 4 years, 2 wins, 3 wins, it was a rough start, and I think that that experience that I went through in my 4 years down at Salve working to rebuild that program, it teaches you some good lessons about things. And, I think most importantly is that we always need to play our best football. Whether we win a game or lose a game, we come back on Monday, we watch the film, and, my exact quote to the guys, win or lose, is you hit the reset button and you start again. This is our next opponent. This is what we have to do. And I do think that our guys believe that. You can probably imagine how, a film session went after the Kings Point game, last week. And, I'm a big relationship guy. Our players know that I love every single one of them. When we lose a football game, obviously there's things that we can point to, performance things on the field, but it starts with me, and if I'm going to be, moping around and dragging around on a Monday practice after a tough loss, then, they're going to feed off of me in good and bad. So, I have a responsibility as their coach to hit the reset button too. And, and people, Frank, you said it earlier, an upset of MIT, to me, our schedule this year of 10 games, if we were 8-0 right now, you know what, I would say to myself, we played our best football 8 weeks in a row. So to be at 5-3, I think that our 3 losses are against, very good teams. But at the same time, there's no team on our schedule that we look at. We're like, guys, if we win this game, this is an upset win for us. And, because then you start to kind of play up and down to competition and things like that. And, every single game day, I tell the guys, listen, it doesn't matter who's on the other sideline. It doesn't matter what field we're at. It doesn't matter what the weather is. We're the most powerful group on the field. We're going to determine the outcome of the game, and it's our responsibility to play our best football. And, I think as long as we can continue to talk like that and believe that, then we don't worry so much about, how big is their left tackle? What's the 40 time of that running back? You don't worry about those things so much, and you focus more on the things that you have to do to win.
Right. It's probably easier anyway. You could say, guys, this is no big deal. I used to coach against Ellie Marpet. This guy's got nothing. So.
Well, he may go down in history as the only left tackle to ever be the offensive most valuable player in the Liberty League. I would probably bargain to say that's the case.
I think that's probably true. But so speaking of the Merchant Marine, we're kind of on a military theme here, Coach. You got 2 more games left this season, and they're both against academy-style clubs and a very improved Coast Guard team is coming up this weekend, this Saturday, and then you finish up with Norwich. We haven't heard much around the whole New England Bowl thing. I know you guys enjoyed that experience. You won a good game against a tough SUNY Maritime team, I think 17-3 to wrap up your season. I mean, obviously you're taking it 1 week at a time, but would something like a New England Bowl bid be a nice way to finish up? I mean, obviously you probably have to win out, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I have not, put any thought into it as of yet. I think that's something that we'll maybe have a conversation, at the end of the year just to kind of see where we're at. I think the uniqueness of our conference this year as opposed to last year. Last year, things were laid out very clear. An undefeated Springfield, a one-loss WPI, and then MIT, Kings Point. This year you have, what do we have? I think we have 2 one-loss teams, something like that, or 3 one-loss teams, and we're at 2 losses in the conference. So there's a lot more things that can happen. And then obviously, you kind of look ahead down the road to MIT Springfield that last week of the season as being a critical game for both of those teams too. So, I mean, the New England Bowl was a phenomenal experience for our university, for our football program, for our alumni. It was only the 4th time in the history of almost 130 years of football here that WPI football made it to a postseason. There had been 1 NCAA appearance back in the early 90s, 1 ECAC in the early 90s. We had an ECAC down against Kane College a couple of years ago in the New England Bowl too. So, anytime you ever have an opportunity to play an extra week, it's a very special thing. It really is. And, whether it's a bowl game, obviously the NCAA piece is the most critical one and kind of the one that everybody really is looking for. But, with 230 teams and only 32 spots, I think that to be able to make any type of postseason, I think is a special thing too. So, yeah, I mean, that's too far ahead for me. And, we're gonna get ready for some Coast Guard guys, and then looking past that, Norwich again, they're a very, very tough team, and they have improved greatly throughout the season.
So, Coach, we're going to put this to a vote to our viewers and our Twitter followers and everything, but I think you may have some input on this. I've got to choose a Week 11 game to attend still, and there are 4 choices out there that are looking really good in terms of this question. Corsica, which is, the rivalry of rivalries when you get down to it. The Dutchman Shoes game, RPI Union, which obviously I've been to a few times, being the Union guy. MIT hosting, MIT hosting Springfield, or the Secretary's Cup game, Coast Guard at Merchant Marine. If you were me, now, you're going to be just one vote in this. We'll add you to the tally, although you can vote on Twitter. Which one would you pick out of those 4 games?
Wow. I grew up in upstate New York. I have friends that played at Cortland and Ithaca. The Corsica game is, I think, from my roots, is a spectacular thing. And I know that with the fan base and the rivalry of that, I think that's a pretty special one. Being a New Yorker, I'm a transplant to New England since 1999. I think the way things are with MIT and Springfield, if I had my choice to sit in the stands, I'm selfishly, for obvious reasons, I'd probably watch MIT and Springfield. And then, at some point, Coast Guard and Kings Point, again, the respect that I have, for the military academies and for the things that they do, off the field. I'm pretty sure football is the easiest thing that they do in their lives. That is a really, really cool thing. And I think the fact that, ESPN, takes time out to broadcast that game where, you may not have 10,000 people in the stands. I don't know. But I think that to put a spotlight, on a game like that against, 2 groups of young men who many of them may spend their lives, defending our country and doing things that, To me, that it's the work of heroes is a pretty cool thing too. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you could lobby hard for all of those. This year, if I was a fly on the wall, MIT Springfield. That's my short answer, very long.
Let's see if Twitter agrees with you there. JB, what do you think? I haven't even asked you on that one yet.
Well, I guess it just depends on how much trouble you're in with Toop, because I don't know if you want to be around him if he's looking for you. He's a big guy, Frank. You don't want to mess with him. Yeah, I guess it'll. Once I think to Coach's point, you can't really look too far ahead because the results of this weekend will definitely have an impact on all four of those games, and a couple of them could end up the new MAC. Part of the reason why we've enjoyed following the new MAC this year, Coach, is that it has been so topsy turvy, up and down. The quote unquote best team gets beaten almost it seems like every other weekend or something. So I think you're going to have to kind of wait and see how the games work out this weekend, and if there's a NCAA berth riding on the line with the Secretary's Cup, with that kind of crowd, the pomp and circumstance, the national TV audience, that might be my pick. I agree with Coach though. I mean, Cortica is a special event. There's not too many venues in Division III where you're pulling probably 10, maybe 15,000 people for a game like that. When we had Wahid Nabi on the show a few weeks back, I mean, he said that was one of the most amazing, game day experiences he's ever had as a football player. So I imagine that would be a good one too. But yeah, there's the tough choices. We'll have to see what the viewers have to say.
But not to jump in on you, Coach, you've got some tough choices. We kind of talked about it at the front of the show. You are on the East Region Regional Advisory Committee. I think you may have a call coming up soon after this is done. Tell all the past committee chairs and future chairs we send our best, and hopefully they'll be interviewed on Selection Sunday with us. But
they'll be like, you're talking to those boneheads again?
Exactly.
Hey, I'm one of those boneheads.
Yeah, well, no, you're not. We are. Trust me. Nonetheless, what made you want to be a part of that advisory committee, and how's the experience going so far, without naming names, obviously?
Yeah, so, this is my second year of being on the committee, and to be honest with you, I thoroughly enjoy it. We get pigeonholed up in our region here of New England football, and like I said, I'm from New York, and I've got a pretty good understanding of, conferences like the NJAC and the MAC and the Liberty League, the Empire 8. It is tremendous football, and to be able to narrow down, these top 10 teams in region, for the second year in a row, there are some really great conversations. There are so many great football programs in this East region. And to be on the committee with some just outstanding coaches and administrators, it is I think there's professional development that you are forced to do in life to kind of further yourself. And then there are the types of professional development like this is for me that I hope I can continue to stay on the RAC committee, because like I said, I thoroughly enjoy it. And, just to even see how things unfold, last year being my first year, and then, ultimately taking a look at who those 32 teams were. And, and I have a little bit more of a, looking at things statistically about where they're coming from and things like that. It's a really, really fun experience, and I really enjoy it. And, you have some teams that are undefeated at this point that may finish undefeated, that could be, obviously in that clear-cut top 10, and then you have a lot of one-loss and to be honest with you, a couple of two-loss teams that, when you look at who their losses are against, it makes things difficult, for us. And like I said, you get some really, really good conversations, and, but I think safe to say is that we have a lot of respect for, the other coaches who talk about the conferences. And at the end of the day, it's pretty much a consensus after our conversation as to who we feel are, those top teams in the region.
Well, don't stop at the regional advisory committee. Get on the main committee and join me at the Stag Bowl, basically, some year. I mean, I love to see East Region folks, join us. And I don't get to see the teams. 11 years, no East participants yet. That may change this year. Let's hope. But
Yeah, that'll change.
it's a great experience. JB's fading. There he is. Now he's back active with us there. I think you have maybe one or two last questions here for Coach as we wrap things up here. But I hope you do get to the main committee at some point. Cheer the East Rack and come on down, or over actually to Canton, Ohio in a couple of years. It's supposed to be a really great event when it goes to Ohio.
I would love that. I can't see anybody entrusted me with that stuff, but if so, I would take it and I would love it.
That's great. So, Coach, with Coast Guard coming up this weekend, I mean, it's Tuesday when we're recording this. I imagine this is officially when you get started, right? I mean, you had your victory Monday. Maybe watched a little bit of film from the past game, but you're sort of switching gears going into a regular full week of game prep. What does that typically look like for you guys at WPI? I mean, I know that all the team guys are carrying a pretty heavy course load, just like everybody else in the new MAC and most of the East Region D3 teams. How do you balance all that out with some of the practice restrictions and so on that the NCAA has put in place now to get prepared for what's a pretty improved Bears team this weekend?
Yeah, we have an extremely unique schedule here. At WPI, it's the only school that I really know of that has a true quarter system. Our kids only take 3 classes at a time. A typical freshman, he'll come in at the end of August and he'll be in a calculus class, a physics or a chemistry class, an elective. And you'll always see the bye week the same week for WPI. It's always been that way for many years because that's finals week for us. So our kids are now in the next term. We're in week 2 of the next term, and they're in 3 new classes. If hopefully they pass Calc 1, they're in Calc 2 this term, and Physics 2 when they pass to Physics 1. And so it is very unique. The freshmen are the ones who struggle the most because things come at you really fast here. You can imagine, where we went to school. I know Union's a trimester, obviously, but you're taking 5 or 6 classes at a time. Picture yourself taking half the amount of classes, but things are getting thrown at you really fast. So instead of a 15-week semester, you've got a 7-week term here. So the structure, it comes really fast. So all the undergraduate classes are done by 4:50 p.m. So we ask our kids to try and get out of class or schedule their classes to be done by 3. And afternoon meetings and practices usually start between 5 and 6 and go till 7 or 8. Sunday's an off day for the guys. Monday's a light day, film, review the game from last week. And, today will be a scout and report meeting on the Bears. And, and then, as the season goes on, we taper down. We're not a big full contact team. We try and, preserve our guys and keep them healthy, as everybody is doing, and rightly so, in college football today. But, yeah, I mean, looking ahead to Coast Guard, Coach George and I go back many years. When I was an assistant here, we were either playing against Coast Guard in the Freedom Conference back in the late 90s. They were in the Liberty League for a year or two, and then went over to the NFC. And then when I was in the NEFC, we played against them. We did not play against them. They were in the state school conference. They were in with all the MASCAC schools. And then, now we've been back at it for a few years. And in those in-between years, that was our scrimmage game. We've always scrimmaged Coast Guard when we weren't playing them. So Coach George is one of my favorite people in the world. He is an awesome coach. Their coordinators, CC Grant. I go back to my old baseball days at WPI, coached against them in baseball too. Dana Fleischman, their co-defensive coordinator. Ray, their offensive coordinator. He has an awesome staff, and those guys have been together for a long time. Those players are extremely well coached. They are tough as nails, and when they recruit kids, I'm pretty sure they probably have their height and weight restrictions and things like that. You can't have an offensive lineman who's too big to hop on the boat because it might sink or whatever. But the other prerequisite is that there's no quit in those guys. There is never any quit in those players. And like I said, so much respect for their program. And they are a very good football team. And they are extremely well coached in the things that they do. Our kids know that, and they know that we have to play extremely well in order to compete and win the game.
You know who else is a really good football program that's well coached? It's this team named WPI, and their coach Chris Robertson's done a great job getting them back on track here after kind of a odd week that we pointed out a week earlier. They become kind of the giant killers of sorts on Saturday against MIT, have thrown the new MAC into a little bit of a question now, and Pool B for that matter. And Coach, we're going to be grading your work coming up on Wednesday with the rack. As once it's released, we're going to go live and talk about it for about 20 minutes and review what we think of the decisions made. And I know Jack McKiernan, who is, I believe, on the rack still, loves when we do something like that. So don't tell him we're doing that, please. But we appreciate your time. We appreciate Rusty Egan always helping us set these things up. And, you guys are doing a great job there. Great bounce back game, and good luck against Coast Guard coming up here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Frank and James, thank you guys for your tireless work that you do. And, for years, you guys have, just done amazing things to promote Division III football. And I think because of the things that you guys do, there's a lot more people out there that understand how amazing Division III football is in the East region. And you guys give a lot of time, and it certainly is greatly appreciated, I know, with all of these student athletes that you talk about on a weekly basis. And I really appreciate you guys allowing WPI to be a piece of your program this week.
Thank you, Coach. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thank you, guys.